All right. Is this on? Hey. All right. Thanks for having me today. My name is Jon Jandoc. I'm a longtime js.la attendee, but this is my first time talking. So, super excited to be here. Yeah. All right. To start off, I want to talk a little bit about who I am. As of a month and a half ago, I was the senior front-ender with the engineering team at Joymode. Before that, I spent 6.5 years in the agency world, splitting time as a developer and an engineering manager at Blue State Digital, which is now just known as Blue State. They work primarily with nonprofits, political groups, and activist groups. And a million gajillion years ago, in another life, I was a designer for JDate. I'm also a co-organizer of the View meetup in Los Angeles. I actually saw a talk on Commandeer a couple months ago, so awesome stuff there. If you like View, come join us. And I'm the former organizer of Lunch.js in downtown LA. I'm not there anymore, so if you're interested in taking over the downtown LA lunch, I encourage you to do so. Best way to get in touch with me is probably just find me on the js.la Slack. You can also just shoot me an email. I don't really do Twitter, but if you want to, you can send me a DM. And of course, find me on LinkedIn. All right. I recently left Joymode at the end of August. I was offered a new role, helping Elizabeth Warren get elected for president. So that's pretty good. It's a little bit of a return to the work I was doing at Blue State. So glad I got some applause there. But this presentation is about Joymode, so I'm going to talk about that and about that company. Joymode, if you don't know, it's a startup. It's based out of, founded in downtown LA. Last year, they opened up a huge warehouse in Culver City, so that's kind of the hub now. It's a subscription rental service that emphasizes access over ownership. I like to think of it as a giant communal closet. If you think of all the stuff that's taking up space in your closet right now, things that you may only use a few times a year, like camping gear, for instance, or maybe if you're a parent, toys for your kids that they're really excited about at first, but then they get bored with. Or maybe there's some fun gadget for yourself that even if you do want to own it, would be great to try before you buy. Well, Joymode is great for that. You can browse thousands of products just like these. They'll deliver these products to your home and then pick them up when you're done. And it's all for a flat monthly subscription, so you can use the service as often as you like. It's kind of like Netflix DVDs, but for stuff. So pretty cool. All right, on to the actual topic of the evening, Codechella. So in January, earlier this year, 2019, the engineering team at Joymode agreed to pack our bags and our laptops, say goodbye to families and homes, go up to a cabin outside of Yosemite for a week, and sit shoulder to shoulder with our colleagues to work. It sounds crazy, and it kind of was, but at least we got matching hoodies. The goal was to migrate our legacy web app, which had been around for, I guess it'd be 3 years at that point, built on Ruby on Rails, CoffeeScript, jQuery, just big old monolith, Bootstrap. These things should all look familiar if you worked on the web 5, 10 years ago. To a decoupled, statically pre-generated, modern Vue and Nuxt app built on the JAMstack, hosted on Netlify, talking to an API-only Rails app on AWS. So lots of buzzwords, enough to fill up another presentation. But rest assured, it was a lot of work. So how did we manage to do all that in a week? We didn't. I mean, obviously. Come on, that's crazy. Sorry if you came here to like find some secret. There's no. Codechella, as we call it, we did actually go lock ourselves in a week let's lock ourselves in a cabin to do work, but that was just the culmination of 9 months of strategic, planned, progressive migration. It was really just the big final push. It was just like the ripping off of the Band-Aid at the end of a pretty long, methodical process. So let's back up a bit. At the beginning of those 9 months, I was hired on to Joymode, April of 2018. I was their first big front-end hire. All the existing engineers, a couple of them are here, I have the utmost respect for them, but they're full stackers. Now, I personally don't really believe in full stack engineers anymore. Anyone who says they're full stack It's really just a backender who thinks they know the front end and does it poorly. But, don't at me. That's a whole other topic. At any rate, I was hired to fix the front half of this proverbial horse. And of course, that involved completely rebuilding the front end, gutting a bunch of legacy code on an already active and feature-rich site. To pull out an often used metaphor, it was rebuilding a plane while flying it. So, how did we do that? All right, well, we had to come up with a plan. First, establish some core goals to drive the migration. So, okay, let's improve the app experience for everyone, users and developers. For users, that meant faster site performance, snappy single-page app navigation, quick load times, richer interactions, animations. For developers, also important, that meant untangled code, good architecture, enforcing and automating best practices and style guidelines with proper tooling. So like ESLint and like Husky, all that fun stuff that just does things for you prettier. Awesome, love it. So many of the engineers on the team didn't have much experience or expertise with modern JavaScript frameworks. Again, CoffeeScript, Bootstrap, jQuery. I need to make it easy for them to do the right thing and hard to do the wrong thing. So spent a lot of time thinking about and configuring things like linters and webpacks so that my colleagues didn't have to. And didn't enjoy that, but somebody had to do it. Second, commit to building all of the new features in this new paradigm, from like whole pages to the smallest widget. So for the front end, that meant creating new view components. And since this is a consumer-facing, heavily branded site, we weren't using an existing component library like Bootstrap. We ditched Bootstrap. I didn't want to be fighting another library's defaults. We built our internal library component from scratch. With things like Vue and React, though, it's really easy to do stuff like that. It's great. So even with small widgets, we were doing a lot of work fleshing out our library with basic things like new button, base buttons, base form inputs, base lists. There's a lot of infrastructure being put into place at that point. And on top of that, we're talking about store modules and actually starting to build out the bits and pieces. It's all there. But as long as you're committing to all the new features are built out on the new framework and you're not creating more technical debt by building new features in legacy code, you're still pushing it forward. And it's also true for the back end. We needed to build out tons of API endpoints because a lot of the server talking to the front end was just old Vue controller couplings. Third, aggressively refactor existing stuff as it came up. So start budgeting a little extra time in your sprints to do what would otherwise be a simple update. If a particular page had a button or a form, like a little thing, could we just, instead of going into the old Sass or Haml code and tweaking that old Ruby template, how about we just swap that out for a Vue component? Could we do not just the button? Could we do the form? Could we do not just the form, but the section? Could we do the entire page? If we can do the entire page, then we can take this page and hook it up to these other pages on a front end and use front end routing to move between the pages. So cool. Now part of the site is actually a single page app, while the rest of the site is still this server rendered Ruby full page reload legacy business. So you're starting to move more and more of the site over to the modern JS application. And then finally, you have to just accept that as the front-end app grows, this starts to become a non-optimal transitional phase. The front-end, the new JavaScript app is growing. You can use things like code splitting and front-end routing to help with your perceived performance. But the reality is, you've got two competing code bases, a jQuery app and a Vue app living next to each other. So you are actually taking a performance penalty. This is that in between of the really awkward phase of okay, well, I'm flying a plane, but there's these guys that are right there, and I can't nearly fly this plane as well as I could before or after the work is done. But it's awkward and it's necessary, so just accept it. All right, so things are humming along. Migration is going great. There's one piece that we just kept bumping into and kept punting on because of its scope and complexity, and that was the checkout flow. Joymode, even though it's rentals, it's basically an e-commerce site. So obviously, the checkout flow was one of the core pieces of the UI. It's the moneymaker. And the code was intense. Thousands upon thousands of lines of CoffeeScript and a ball of thick, wormy spaghetti. Who knows how many lines of supporting Ruby controllers and Sass and Haml. Plus, we needed a ton of APIs built out to support the migration. So all of this was just a monster, not something we could easily migrate over in a single sprint or two. But it was a roadblock to actually finishing this migration and keeping us from moving the entire front end completely to the JAMstack. So I was talking to a colleague one day. It was about late November. And I was venting about my frustrations about the checkout flow and how hard it was, how much work is going to be. And it really was the last piece before we could fully migrate the site over. I mentioned how I just listened to an episode of the Full Stack Radio podcast. Great podcast, definitely recommend it. The guest had talked about doing a codecation where he and a work partner, one person, locked themselves in a cabin for a week with the express goal of cranking out an MVP app. I don't remember what the app is, but check out the episode 101. I said, that's what we need to do. We just need to pull off the Band-Aid, lock ourselves in a cabin, cabin in the woods, take care of this. And so it's at this point, we're all, engineering teams sitting next to each other. It's at this point when our VP of engineering, who was sitting across in catty corner from us, overheard, he poked his head over the monitor and said, with the most genuine enthusiasm, are you serious? Because I grew up in Yosemite. I have a house in Oakhurst, so I'm down if you're down. So honestly, I didn't think he was serious until he brought up the subject at our engineering weekly meeting a couple of days later. He'd already gotten the budget. It was approved. He's already deep in logistics, so okay, game on, let's do it. And so Codechella was born. Whew. But wait a second. Being in close confines with your coworkers, again, I have the utmost respect for my coworkers, but being, in close confines with them for a week, rooming together, eating together, sharing bathrooms, while at the same time trying to do deep, focused, stressful work at an intense pace. That's kind of a nightmare. Especially for introverts, and I'm an extrovert, but that it still sounded like it might not be the best of ideas. So might this be a huge mistake? The potential for drama wasn't completely lost on everyone. Some folks even joked about setting up a camera to live stream the entire thing. This is the real world here. So but mistake or not, though, the ball was already rolling. So 1 month later, in January, we all met up at Oakhurst, California. It's at the south gate of Yosemite. And we kicked off Codechella. And it went really, really well. There it is. So you can see, that was the setup for the week. It was just a bunch of fold-up chairs and tables. We packed our monitors and laptops in the trunks of the cars, holed up in the living room and the dining room, and just cranked away. It's interesting, it wasn't in my notes, but the parallels to kind of the first presentation are here. Both worked on Vue stuff and both got into awkward space and cranked away. But yeah, look, everybody's smiling. No one died, didn't end up killing each other. Surprising lack of drama. I think a lot of credit goes to management on this one. We did a good job beforehand of divvying up the work, planning who was going to do what. For instance, one person handled infrastructure, a couple people handled APIs, a couple people focused on migrating our vanilla Vue.js components to Nuxt. I spent most of my time rebuilding that checkout flow. That kept me up until 4 a.m. in the morning, several nights that week. But we also had planned activities to break up the day. We went out for meals. We visited the local brewery, hit the gym, had some late night board games. That's Scythe, if any board game nerds here. We went for walks, of course, because we're in Yosemite, had to do some hiking. If you're not doing something like this, then why would you even go lock yourselves in a cabin in the woods? It's easy enough to just lock yourself at home or your garage, or just have a normal hackathon. So yeah, it all looks like fun, and it was. Honestly, this week was probably one of my highlights of 2019. Still a lot of work though. So I made sure to find some time to be alone, enjoy my surroundings, do a little working WFH, working from hammock. But in the end, we did it. Accomplished colossal amount of work in a short period of time, relaunched our web app, didn't launch any new features, but we cleared out a ton of technical debt. Site performance was improved. Some pages were loading 10 times faster. The ability for our engineers to be productive went through the roof. Projects that would have taken a couple of weeks were now taking a couple of days. Product managers were happy, execs were happy. So yeah, go team. So now you may be thinking to yourself, hey, that sounds like fun. We should do this at my company. So is a Codechella right for you? I don't know. You're going to be in close proximity to people with whom you have a professional working relationship with. It's one thing to do this with a close collaborator, but it's another thing entirely when the whole team is involved. So yeah, ask yourself, are you willing and ready to inflict yourself onto others for a week while also making space for them? And it's okay to say no. It's absolutely normal and sane to not want to be around your coworkers 24/7. For me at Joymode, though, I felt like I won the lottery. I honestly did. Like, no drama. Team got along great. I genuinely like love and respect the folks that I work with. Like, they're awesome. So, plus, super productive. Came out of the experience not just proud of all the work we accomplished, but feeling a deeper sense of camaraderie for my team members. So yeah, if this still sounds like a good idea to you, I'm going to end with a few takeaways. First, think about what you're asking people to do. This isn't summer camp. You're asking people to carve out time in their normal lives and routines to do work. That's a sacrifice, so respect that. Make sure you have clear goals about what you're trying to accomplish and why you're asking this of people. Respect boundaries and life situations. Understand that some people have kids and families and other obligations. A couple people did not go on Codechella, and that's fine. Understand that some people aren't comfortable being in a situation like this. Maybe they have their own sense of work-life balance, or they just don't want to do it. So it's okay if people say no. That's a very normal, reasonable thing to expect, and they don't need to justify it. If people choose not to participate, that doesn't make them less committed to the work or less of a team player. They have boundaries, so respect that. Get buy-in from the rest of the organization. At Joymode, we took the whole engineering department, locked them away for a week. If you're also planning on taking an entire department of people offline, especially the people that build things for other people, make sure that's okay with everyone. Other people have their own goals, their own projects, their own deadlines, many of which probably involve engineers. So folks will need convincing as to why this is a good idea and why things will be better in the end. Have a plan of attack. Make sure everyone knows what they're doing when they get there so they can use their time efficiently. But also have a plan of sustenance. Very important. Make sure basic logistics are figured out. Is there food? Who's getting food? Who's driving? Who's sleeping where? As an example, I snore. So I made it clear from the beginning that if we're going to do this, I need my own room or people are going to hate me. Have a plan of distraction. Make it fun. It can't all be work. Be intentional about planning activities and breaking up the day. Make sure people are taking a break from the computer and not completely burning themselves out. And speaking of burnout, expect a recovery phase afterwards. I was definitely burnt out for a couple weeks after this, and I know I wasn't alone. So make sure that you balance this intense exertion with a lighter workload afterwards or time off. Even taking that into account, though, I think it was worth it. We managed to accomplish a quarter's worth of work, smash that into just a couple of weeks. And that's it. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah.